Thank you, whoever the Zoom gal is. Boy, I wish it was Siri's voice. Siri's much nicer. Okay, so like I said, welcome back to another edition of Financial Accounting Continued. A couple things I just emailed you guys. Make this bigger. I see everyone's faces when they're listening. Okay. So the syllabus has been updated slightly, and so has the schedule, because I had to go and double check with the TTU calendar, make sure everything was in line. Just in general, a couple things. One, the lecture recordings are going to be accessible right here, and I'll list them. So if you I won't notify you about them going forward. So if you need to go back and review anything from the lectures, I will make sure that they're posted after class. It takes a little while for this video to be converted into a formal video that I can upload. The videos are uploaded to YouTube. I prefer it that way just because I think YouTube tends to be a little more reliable than media site or any other type of format. So these links are on YouTube, but they're accessible through the lecture recordings content area on Blackboard. The homepage, I kind of modified it, simplified it a little bit here. Zoom link at the top, office hours up at the top too. Generally speaking, my office hours are right after class, and I host them for about 3 hours. So for this week, I'll just make them, come in, come and go as you please, sort of type. And then by next week, once we have a finalized roster, what I'll do is I'll set up a Calendly application where you go in, you select a time period where you want to meet with me. And then that will be the way we sort of make reservations for office hours. Office hours in general are meant to be, open door policies. And I have to explain this to my accounting 2,300 students that you don't need to make an appointment for office hours, you just show up. But to help sort of manage the flow of people trying to get a hold of me if it's through Zoom, especially, I prefer to have some sort of reservation system. So appointments are available outside of these office hours. So if you need to get a hold of me at, say, 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the weekdays, email me and let me know that you're available to meet with me at that time. Generally speaking, office hours are the best time to meet with me, but I don't want you to think that that's the only time. Okay, this is a class that moves very quickly. So if you need help on the weekends, I'll understand that. Sometimes I usually can be found at a desk on the weekends, especially during the summer because we move so quickly. So don't hesitate to reach out to me and say, hey, can we meet tomorrow on Saturday at whatever time? I'm happy to do that, okay, especially over Zoom. The key thing about office hours is that, as you know, we don't have a mask policy on campus anymore. So that means you can come to campus and not have to wear a mask. That also means that if you want to meet with me in person during my office hours, that's fine as well. Again, I ask that starting next week, you use Calendly to reserve a slot time, just so that way I can manage the flow. I'm happy to meet with you over Zoom, okay? So I'm very flexible, whatever modality works best for you. The key thing is, if you need to review your exam, okay, I don't review exams over Zoom. So if you need to review your exam, you need to come and see me in person. And the reason why we do that is to protect the integrity of the exams. We can't show or discuss exam questions on over Zoom anymore. That's prohibited because we found that students were basically copying, recording information about exams while having Zoom conversations. So if you want to go over exam, you have to meet with me in person. Again, happy to meet with you outside of office hours too. Just let me know, but make sure you be aware that you need to meet in person. Other parts of Blackboard that you see have been changed or modified here. Excuse me. Freaking allergies. So as I stated before in the email and yesterday's class, this exam is broken up into 4 parts. So chapter 14 and 17, then we have an exam. And it goes like that, 2 chapters in an exam. I believe that's fair, considering how dense the material is, okay? Exams are taken in class, during class time. That's on the calendar. The final exam is comprehensive. So that's the course from a broad perspective. Inside the folders, you'll see that, for instance, in chapter 14, I have, instead of just uploading the specific files the PDF notes to download and print. Some of you have asked me, hey, is it possible to get these files in Word or in a OneNote file? And so I'm happy to accommodate that. What I've done is I put up class notes, and I'll continue to put up class notes in a zip folder. And zip folders act just kind of like regular files. They download onto your computer. So I'm in Chrome right now. If you open that sucker up, it'll open up a folder, and it's a zip folder. So you don't necessarily need to, take the files out. Sometimes right-click it and say, do you want to extract these files? You don't necessarily need to, but if you're going to write in the files, you need to save them. So what I've done here is I do all my notes in class on OneNote, as you know. So if you double-click and open up on the files, there it is in OneNote. Just make sure that you save it or export it somehow. Just make sure it's saved, on your computer or in your cloud drive someplace. Sometimes people try to save things while they're not, when they haven't been extracted, and it causes problems. So I recommend extracting it or saving these files once you open them up, so that we can modify them. So if you have a stylus and you prefer to write on your computer rather than print out the notes, I totally understand. I know there's a lot of notes to print out, especially for 14.1. So this is available to you. So there's one feature. Some people have, like I do, PDF, Adobe Acrobat Pro. And Adobe Acrobat Pro, you can also, if you have a stylus, generally you can write on these PDF files as well. But these are the files that you need to, if you don't have the ability to use a stylus, you need to print these. So I just recommend going into the PDF file and printing from the PDF Adobe Acrobat file if you're going to print notes. The other file type I put up there, it sort of seems like overkill, but it's also in Word. So the only problem with this is it looks a little grainy, and I only recommend, thank you, what is this, in freaking macro style, whatever. I don't recommend printing this just because it's a little bit fuzzy and grainy, but you can write on this Word file if you have a stylus as well. So just kind of giving you guys updates and let you know I'm happy to make things flexible as possible, but the bottom line is you need to be able to write things down when you're attending class. So those zip files are going to be uploaded in the respective chapter folders. So you click on that if you need. We'll probably get through 14.1 today. 14.2 is pretty short. I'll get 14.3, 14.4. Those are the learning objectives. I'll get those up, as I modify these files and make them available for use. So that's where they are. Click them, open up the file that you want, save it, and then use that as your notes going forward. I've also put up flashcards for this chapter, and I'll do this for other chapters too. You don't have to do anything with this, okay? It's optional. Some people like flashcards. So if you open this up, it tells you what the instructions are. Here are the different terms from the class that you just need to be aware of going into the exam. If you're a flashcard type of person, just realize you need to fill out some of these. I filled out a couple of these on there for you. But you need to go through your book, fill out these flashcards if you're going to use them. And then if you want, print them out, cut them out, whatever follow the instructions, and the nice little set of flashcards there. You don't have to do that stuff. Some people prefer to use flashcards this day and age still, and I think that's fine. Let's see here. So the excuse me, the group work will be available tomorrow morning. Group work will be posted as an assignment, and within the assignment, it'll have certain files attached. There'll be an Excel format. I'll ask you to fill out the Excel file in different boxes. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. Today in particular, today is the last day to add classes. So there's potentially still people who are trying to get into this class. So by the end of the day, there'll be no more ads. That's what I'm hoping for, at least. We'll see what Texas Tech actually follows through with the rules. So at the end of today, hopefully we'll have a solid roster. So tomorrow morning, I'll be able to tell you what groups you're in, email you, and then you guys can coordinate however you want to outside of class to work on your group assignments. So that being said, the Chapter 14 folder, the content folder, will have class notes, flashcards if you want to use them, and it'll have your assignments for chapter 14. And there's basically just one big assignment in probably some different files. Okay. Any questions about that stuff? Thumbs up if you guys are with me right now. Any questions about that stuff?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So for the OneNote, once you download the file, will
Yeah.
it just automatically go to that OneNote app if we have it, or it was just pop up?
I believe it does. I believe it does. It sort of depends on how your system is set up. So like I said, my recommendation is if you're having trouble using it, Brian, then I just recommend go ahead and just extract the file into a folder on your desktop first and then try opening it up. See if that helps out if you have any difficulties with that, or just come and see me. Any other questions?
So whenever I tried to just open the recorded lecture from yesterday,
Yeah.
it popped up as like a private video.
It did.
It wouldn't let me access it.
Well, you know, shit. I'll have to fix that. My bad. Can you send me an email reminder so I can fix that?
Absolutely.
My apologies. I think I probably just got a little carried away with that sucker. Sometimes it happens too if there's an error with the upload too. So I'll just take a look at that. Thanks for letting me know there. Any other questions? Okay. So syllabus, like quick syllabus and calendar. So as I talked about before, in this class, we are going to move very quickly. Most of your work is going to be, the points that you earn in class are going to be based off of your exam. So I said roughly about 90% of your exams, of your grade is based off of 4 exams. So each midterm that we have is worth 100 points. Your comprehensive final includes new material plus some material from the previous chapters. Group work was approximately 8 or 9%. So you'll have 8 assignments, 5 points each. You'll do as a group. So that's 40 points. Accountability will be the 10 points for your grade. So that's roughly about 2% for your overall course grade. And again, accountability is based off of primarily what your group members, how your group members evaluate you and how you helped out during the term. And also based off of your attendance. So granted, some people miss class for whatever reason, or they were unable to complete a poll. Okay, I understand that. Those things can happen. Okay, I'm not deliberately, looking at every single, absence as a deduction, right? I look at your overall sort of attendance for the term. It's not like every single day counts as a point. It's an overall kind of attendance I'm taking. So if you miss a poll, just realize, I'm sorry to hear that. You need to be present. You need to have your butt in the seat. Okay. If you have any other issues about meeting class or missing class, come and talk to me personally about that. Okay. But that's how the course will go. 500 points. You get 450 and above. That's an A. That's 90% right there, or 89.5. I usually round up to the nearest 1%. So conventional rounding. I think we talked about rounding the other class too. So don't. It's like, is 89.5 still a 90? Yes, it is. Conventional rounding says so. That's that. So basically, that's the primary update is just letting you know how the point breakdown is going to be. Yesterday, I talked about percentages. I'm actually giving you points in this case. The course calendar, again, this seems kind of fuzzy, but now let's see here. So roughly, this is how the course breaks out. Chapter 14, 17 first. You do a review. And then on that Tuesday, so next Tuesday, you'll need to make sure that your homework has been submitted to Blackboard by 11:59 p.m. If you still have questions about your group work, I'm happy to discuss that during the review. I think it's a fair time to do that, okay? Usually what I do is I kind of give sort of general pointers about, group work. If you have a specific question about yours, I'm happy to talk with you during office hours. Or come into my office. Let me know what works best for you. Okay, so just realize that this is a rough tentative schedule based on how I expect the term to go. Nothing's due on the weekends. Let's see here, exam 2, exam 3. Wait a minute here. This is still kind of jacked up. Hold on a second. Bear with me here. Stand by. While I move this sucker over. Let's see. Where's that calendar? There it is. I have to print this, I think. Print to PDF. I'm rather savvy with electronics and technology, but sometimes I make little mistakes. Okay, save. Yes. And then let me upload this. See if this works. Well, print. Okay. This much better. Sorry about that, folks. There it is. This is what I needed to point out to you was that down below here, that the final exams actually begin on that Friday of the last week of class. So I think I had scheduled class on that day, so that's my apologies for that. So what we'll do is it's not like we're really going to be crunched. Chapter 22 and 23 will go fairly quickly, even if I doubt we'll even need that much time. So we'll still have time to work in your groups probably in class and give some breakout time there. But you will have your group evaluations will be due at the same time as your group work or homework on the July 1st at 11:59 p.m. Friday, if you have final exams, that's understandable. Our final exam is going to be Saturday, don't shoot the messenger, at 8 a.m. So that will run 2.5 hours. Our other exams are during class time. You'll have an hour and 50 minutes, hour and 50 minutes to do your exams. Generally, people get their exams done within an hour or an hour and 20 minutes, midterms for this class. But you'll have a full 2.5 hours for the final exam. Any questions about the calendar or any of these updates in general? Thumbs up if you guys are with me. All right, that stuff is out of the way. Last time we left off, we were talking about bonds in general. And we talked about the different ways that we calculate present value factors. And as I said in class, I'll give you formulas or I'll give you tables to determine the appropriate present value factors to use. When you figure out the present value factor, you need to apply the present value factor because securities are based off of the present value of future cash flows. So in the case of bonds, we've got present value of interest and present value of principal. So once you figure out the appropriate present value factors for both a single sum and an annuity, then it comes down to how do you apply those things. So here's a basic example. Now I like to use, unlike your book and the authors, I like to use a consistent example throughout the entire chapter, just so that way you can benchmark things fairly easily. So what you'll see here is the facts that we'll go through throughout all these different examples. Beerbo issues $100,000 face value of bonds. They're 10% bonds, 5 years. 10% is the stated, 5-year is the term, okay? Now, the key thing you need to remember when you're going through these problems, bonds are typically paid out semi-annually, okay? If the problem you get on the exam says annually, then you don't need to do anything to the 5 years or the 10%. But if you see it say semi-annually, that's an alert, you got to do something there. What's the issue price of the bonds given a 10% market rate? So this is the key rate to remember, is the market rate. The market rate is what we use to determine the present value of the different cash flows, future cash flows. The stated rate is really only used once, and that's to determine the periodic interest payments. Once we figure out the actual payments, the interest payments, we don't really need to worry about the stated rate anymore. So always, always, always do analysis first, just to make sure you got your facts straight. So this is how I organize my facts, is when I go through, I need to draw it out. There's a lot of facts in a word problem. I need to sketch it out in a way that makes sense. As we talked about yesterday in class, when the market is demanding a rate that we are actually providing them, they are happy. They're going to give us exactly what the face value is of the bonds. So in this case, if the market rate is the same as stated, which it is, we're going to issue these bonds at par value, which basically means we're going to get exactly what the face is, and the face is what we want. So I organize the facts as follows. There's the face value, there's the stated rate, it's annual. All the rates I give you are annual. Whether or not you have to divide them by 2 depends on if the payments are semi-annual or not. The terms in year, 5 years, payment period semi-annually. So I get those things out because usually when I'm writing things down, it sort of eases my test anxiety. I'm not sure if you're the same way, but writing things out helps me kind of go through a methodical way of organizing all the facts and doing what I need to do. Knowing that semi-annual, I immediately take the 10% stated and I divide it by 2. Once I know that payments are every 6 months, I can take that 5%, multiply it by the face value to determine how much my I payment is, my interest payment is. Thumbs up if you guys are with me on this so far. Organizing facts helps you avoid mistakes. Okay? The N we talked about in class is the number of payment periods. In this case, it's 5 years, but that's not necessarily the N. Because the payments are semi-annual, it means we're going to have 10 payments. So that's my N. What is my I? The market rate is 10%, but again, because we're semi-annual, I need to take that 10% market rate and divide it by 2 as well. Again, market rates and stated rates, don't get those mixed up. Make sure you know the difference. They will be explicit on your exam. So the I that we're talking about here, the market rate per payment is 5%. Again, both are the same, so it's issued at par. But when it comes to, once you figure out the market rate, realize that it's this market percent divided by 2 and the term times 2 that determines the present value of an annuity and the present value of a single amount. Those are based off the tables. Those you can calculate in Excel. Those you can calculate using the formulas above. Thumbs up if you're with me on that. Okay. What do you do with these? Multiply them by the appropriate future cash flows. Future cash flows are going to be the interest payments. We're going to make $5,000 payments every 6 months. It's fixed. It's on a regular schedule. Therefore, it is an annuity. And it's an annuity that happens at the end of the period, not the beginning. So time goes by, interest payment. Time goes by, interest payment. Leases and rent are different. They happen at the beginning. Those are called annuities due. We'll talk about that later. This is an ordinary annuity. It happens at the end of the period. So we multiply the present value factor of an ordinary annuity times the $5,000, and we get the present value of those cash flows, $38,000. The face value is $100,000, but that's going to be paid out 10 periods in the future. So when we discount that backwards in time, The present value of that 100,000 is roughly about $61,400. Thumbs up if you're with me so far on this. All right. When you add those two amounts together, what do you get? You get the bond's issue price, the market value at the time we issue the bonds. Okay. Sometimes this is a quote. So a price quote would be 100, meaning that it's 100% of the face value. Okay. So market price, generally we're talking about the proceeds. The market price quote would be what are those proceeds as a percentage of overall face? Well, that's the 100,000 market price divided by 100,000 face, or 100%, or what you see quoted on the markets, 100. Thumbs up if you guys are with me on this. Okay. Now, that is basically the setup for the par value situation. It's kind of a bland, vanilla, boring sort of scenario, but let's just sort of make sure that we're clear on what's going on. At t equals 0, investors will pay or invest 100,000. At t equals 10, that's 5 years in the future, they will receive $100,000, the principal or the face value of the bonds. How are investors compensated for this investment? Well, they're getting 5%, the market rate. They are basically being compensated at the market rate. It just so happens that the market rate equals the stated rate. We'll talk about when it's different. But they are being compensated at the market rate, what they actually desire. So interest paid has equal what investors want. That's why it's issued at par. There's no difference. 5,000 paid equals $5,000 desired. Investors are fairly compensated throughout the entire term. Now, I say fairly, I mean that what we're paying them is actually what they want. That's not always the case, as we're going to see later on. Thumbs up if you guys are with me on this so far. Any questions about this? Take a baseline example. Yes, we'll give you the factors. You'll be out the factors on the exam, or I'll give you the formula up above, and you just need to know how to go through and do the math. Okay. All right, so what's the issue? So applying the present value factors. What is the issue price if the market rate's 12%? Same factors as we talked about before, except here's the facts. We're talking about a 12% market rate. That's different. We divide that by 2 because the payments are semi-annual. So we still have an N of 10, but our I is now 6. So if we plug those in the formulas up above, or we consult the present value tables, these guys determine different present value factors. What we do with those factors, we multiply them by the actual cash flows. The payment is still $5,000. That's the $5,000 we have to legally pay out every single 6 months. Every time we may have a 6-month period. Face is the 100,000. Okay. Multiply those out. What do we get? 92,639. That's interesting. Why the heck is it? Why are the investors giving us less? Well, they're giving us less because we're not giving them what they want. They want 12%. And I say, well, I'm sorry, I'm legally only allowed to pay you 10% every 6 months. And they say, well, that's not going to get good enough. I'm going to walk away. And we say, hold on. Before you walk away, I'll tell you what I'll do. You, the investor, give me $92,000 right now. Okay. I will, because I'm legally required to, pay you back $100,000. Now that seems weird. They're going to get an extra $7,300. Why am I giving them back another $7,300 on top of what they initially invested? Because they wanted a higher interest rate than what I'm actually paying them. So this 76,309 essentially is what I'm saying here. Investors wanted 6%. We're only paying them 5% every 6 months. It looks like we're ripping them off, but we're not. It is less than what they want. They're getting 5,000. They roughly want 6,000. Okay. So that $1,000 that it appears that I'm shorting them, I'm ripping them off. I'm not. I'm going to compensate them for that $1,000 shortfall later. We make up for the 1% or $1,000 difference by giving them the additional 7360 at the maturity date. The maturity date, they get a full 100,000. Their initial 92,000 plus another $7,300. So that $7,300, take the present value of all those $1,000 shortfalls. Guess what it equals? 7360. So the bottom line is they are getting made whole. They're getting paid exactly what they wanted. They wanted 6%. It looked like we were not paying them 6%. It looked like we're only paying 5%. We said, no, I'll make up for the shortfall at the end. I'll give you more than what you initially invested. It's not a gain. It's essentially that extra amount that they did not get when I made my payments every 6 months. Thumbs up if you guys are with me on this. Royce, are you doing all right there? Good. Okay. Emily's happy. She's smiling. Right? Love those bonds. Favorite topic in the whole wide world. Ashley, you doing all right there? Good chew. Okay. Now, what if it's the opposite? Okay. Keep in mind that the previous example is a situation where stocks are really doing well. So everyone wants stocks. Nobody wants bonds. Maybe stocks are returning 15, 18%. They look at my 10% bonds like, I don't want your bonds. Right? That's a situation where we would issue at a discount. But flip it. Let's say that all of a sudden stocks are doing really bad. Okay. Now all of a sudden my 10% looks pretty damn good, right? So I'm not just going to give them 10% because that's not what they really want. Okay. I'm in a bidding situation here. The market rate's now down to 8%. In fact, probably at this point, investors are just happy to get anything above 0 because stocks are doing so terribly, bonds look really awesome. So markets now demand, or the market's a little bit easier. Like, I'm good with 8%. It's like, yeah, well, I'm legally required to pay you 10%. So what are you going to give me to make me feel better? Go through the same analysis. You get a 4% now at market rate every 6 months. That plus your N of 10 determines new present value factors. You multiply them by the respective future cash flows. Same process as before, just got to practice writing it out, okay? I'm going to demand that investors give me $108,000 up front. Don't just give me $100,000, give me $108,000. Now this is the weird situation, okay? I'm not getting pimped out here, okay? They're giving me an extra $8,000, and I'm going to use that to make my regularly scheduled $5,000 interest payments. In other words, this $8,000 extra that investors give me is like a subsidy. They are going to subsidize the interest payments that I have to make back to them. So it seems weird. They're giving me $8,000. I'm going to use some of that and give it back to them little by little by little when I make my interest payment. So what does it really cost me? It really only costs me 4%. Legally, I'm required to pay them 5%. So down below, sort of get down to it here, interest paid that I have to make legally is going to be more than what investors want. That's not right for me. So $5,000 paid, they only really want $4,000. Why am I giving? Where's this excess $1,000 coming from? It's not coming from me, folks. It's coming from the investor. Part of that $8,000 that they paid me up front is part of, like, I'm going to use some of that when I pay them their interest payments. It's not like I'm ripping them off or anything, right? They understand that. This is all up above board here. So essentially the $1,000 excess, that is, you take the present value of the excess they're getting and do a present value factor of the ordinary annuity. Investors need to give me an extra $8,000 up front. And I'm going to use that pile of money, every 1/10 of it, roughly 1/10 of it, I'm going to use that to help make my $5,000 interest payments. So what does it really cost me? It only costs me 4%. So investors now are making us whole by giving us some extra money to subsidize those $5,000 payments. So effectively, what I'm actually paying out of my own cash account is roughly only the $4,000. The other $1,000 is coming from that additional pile of $8,000 they gave me up front. Thumbs up if you guys are with me on this so far. Any questions about this? Hopefully this is making sense to you. If not, come and see me. We'll talk about it, okay? Now, keep in mind, through all these examples, no one's winning, no one's losing, okay? It's the market rate. It's the market rate that's always determining the true cost of borrowing money, okay? The stated rate is just a legal requirement. The cash flows that make the market rate work just happen at different times. So that's the reason why this is such a pain in the butt. We just have cash flows that don't match up with the actual market rate, but eventually all the cash flows equal what the market rate is. So going through an example, bonds issued at par. And this is from my own sort of interest schedule. This is kind of a boring sort of situation, but essentially there's no amortization here. So we don't need to worry about any type of premium or premium or discount that we have to amortize away. They equal, the carrying value starts at 100,000. It doesn't change, it ends up at 100,000. Total interest paid will equal total interest that I have incurred as an expense. Nothing fancy there. Up front, they give me cash of 100,000. First payment is July 1st, 2020. It's going to be the same, what I record as an expense on my income statement just happens to equal what I'm paying out cash. Key thing to remember, okay, if interest is not paid at the end of the year, we need to make an accrual for how much interest has been incurred to date. So keep in mind, from July 1st through end of December, we've incurred another 6 months worth of interest. We just happen to pay it a day later. So right now, what we need to do is record the expense as we've done up above, but instead of recording cash, we'll just record an interest payable liability. Okay. Next day, what do? We just empty it out, pay the cash. Seems kind of tedious, but it's just to make sure our balance sheets are up to date. Thumbs up if you guys are with me on those. Any questions about those guys? Isn't this fun? Telling you, it's all about present values and market rates. At maturity, maturity will happen 5 years in the future. So at January 1st, 2025, we are going to pay off these bonds. Any type of, first thing we need to do is make sure any type of interest that's been accrued but not yet paid is paid out. So we'll make our regularly scheduled payment, and then we will cash out whatever the bond's face value is. And you'll see that this doesn't change, regardless if there's bonds, premiums, or discounts. If there are bond premiums or discounts, we will amortize those away to zero. So by the time the maturity date occurs, there will be zero premiums or discounts. By the time the maturity happens, you'll just see the bonds payable of 100,000, and that's exactly what we'll have to pay out. So maturity date doesn't really change. It's always going to be the same amount. Okay? Now, there are two ways of dealing with bond premium and discount amortization. One is the straight line method. It works so long as it's not significantly different from the effective interest method, which we'll talk about next. So bond discounts and premiums. We issue these things when the market rate's 12 and our interest rate is 10. So we got ourselves a situation where bondholders want more than what we're giving them on a 6-month basis. Therefore, they're going to give us less money up front. We'll give them the full face value at the end. Thumbs up if you're still with me on this. Okay. So all the facts, all the analysis we've already done. Let me just check something really quick here. Yeah. Let's see here, interest amortization. It's got a straight line method. So this is my Excel spreadsheet. I can show you how to create one of your own, but you're going to find that it's straight line method doesn't require a lot of work. Essentially what we need to do here when we're doing the straight line method is we have to acknowledge that the proceeds we get up front, the market price, is going to be an amount less than face. The face value is what the carrying value needs to be at the time these things mature. Now the carrying value is whatever's in the T account for bonds payable. In this case, it's 100,000, right? Net of, in this case, we get a discount. And that'll be a debit. So in this case, it's like, what, 7360, okay? So the net of those is what's determining the carrying value at any point in time. That's how much the debt is valued on our balance sheet. Granted, some people say that's bullshit because we owe them $100,000 at maturity. And I say, yeah, but you have to understand, we might pay off these bonds early too. So we're going to show, essentially, we're going to creep up to 100,000 little by little over time. And the way we do that is we take that 7360 and we're just going to divide it by our number of end payments. In this case, it's 10, and that's how much we're going to plug in as our amortization each period. So this is still kind of boring. It just requires us to do one little additional step. Our interest that we're going to record is actually the sum of whatever the amortization is plus our actual I payment. So you have to understand we're going to be going from right to left here. Take the 736, add it to the actual $5,000. That's what we show as our interest expense. Why is interest expense higher? Because the market rate is higher than the stated rate. Okay. Thumbs up if you're with me on this. Okay. You have to take a step back and make sure that it's making sense to you. Like, am I adding and subtracting the right direction? Okay. Interest expense is higher, so we know that we need to add the amortization to our interest payments. And in doing that, we will see that 736, we will see it go down all the way till it reaches 0. That's how we get rid of the discount. As we reduce the discount, you see that it's going up slightly. Every carrying value is going up. It's going up. It's going up. And it's going up in a straight line in a fixed amount. So that's nice. Makes the math a little bit easier. Generally speaking, I don't ask you guys on the exam to go like 10 rows deep. I usually go 1 or 2 rows deep. And then we'll say, like, what is the carrying value or what's the interest expense? Okay. Thumbs up if you guys are with me on that. I don't want to inundate you with a big schedule to fill out for the exam. That's just like overkill to me. So that being the case, what we're talking about here, just make sure you know this is going to be different than the effective interest method. We're talking about straight line method. Determine the periodic amortization first, then determine what the interest expense is second. When we look at effective interest method, we're going to do the opposite. We'll figure out interest expense first, and then the amortization last. And slight difference there. Key thing just to remember is the difference. I love sort of showing you just the key things you just need to focus on. Okay. Let's see here. Oh, yeah, total interest expense is going to be greater than total amount we paid. That makes sense. We're going to pay them an extra 7360 eventually. All right, so carrying value increases to face value over time. The balance in the discount will decrease. The balance in the discount will decrease, which in turn increases the carrying value. So balance decreases. Hold on a sec. That doesn't make sense. Scribble that crap out there. Just do that. I think I was trying to go some direction that I changed my mind on. But its balance is decreasing, being amortized over time, and therefore the balance is decreasing at a fixed rate. This is the key thing to remember. We're using the straight line method. So some questions I ask you on the exam are, does the balance in the discount increase or decrease over time? It's always decreasing. We're always getting rid of or amortizing away any premium or discount. But what is the effect on carrying value? Carrying value is going to go up over time because we're in a discount. We're starting in the basement, going way up. The premium, it's the opposite direction. What's a journal entry at the issuance date? Well, we're going to go ahead and debit the cash for what we have, credit the bonds payable, and usually I just leave this to last, try to figure out what I need to plug in what my discount is. So we calculated that before, but that's the discount. You have to keep in mind that this is the carrying value. It's going to be the bonds payable credit balance, net of any debit balance and the discount of bonds payable. There's our carrying value. And like I said, if you do a couple rows of the spreadsheet, you'll see what the trend is, what's happening to interest expense over time, what's happening to carrying value over time. What's the journal entry on each payment date? It's going to be the same. That's another cool thing about the straight line method. We're always going to be debiting interest expense 5736, 5736, 5736. It's nice. How much do we amortize? 736, 736, 736. kind of a boring scenario, but it's nice, it's neat. It definitely differs if we're talking about the effective interest method there. So thumbs up if you guys are with me on this so far. It's making sense, seeing the differences there, nuances. Any questions about this?
Yeah, that part was supposed to be cut off, right?
Yeah, I cut this off because I didn't want to like put the full sheet in there. I'm just sort of showing you the first two interest payments, July 1st and then December 31st. And again, like I said, I don't want you guys having to calculate the full 10 rows in the exam. Any other questions? Again, just be careful on December. If the payment's not happening on December 31st, we have to make the credit, not the cash, but the interest payable. It's tedious. We'll pay it off the next day. I provided the schedule, amortization schedule here to sort of show you how I organize things. But just keep in mind is that our T accounts in the ledger should show these effects happening, okay? So I can see what the amortization is every single time I make an interest payment, and I can determine what's my current balance in the discount, net it against my bonds payable face value, determine what the carrying value is. So it's not like I'm using multiple schedules here. I like to organize things on a schedule first and then make sure that the T accounts match those things. Carrying value is going up over time at a fixed rate. What happens at the maturity date? Well, you're going to have to realize, fast forward 5 years, right? This is what the ledger account will show. All the amortization at a fixed amount every period. It will show a zero balance in the discount. Face value of 100. So what's the carrying value of the debt when this thing matures? It equals what we actually have to pay our investors. Investors are expecting at the maturity date 100,000. What do I legally owe them at that point in time? 100,000. What does my accounting system show as the carrying value of that debt? 100,000. So it's a beautiful system. It works well if we do it right. The only difference between this and the effective interest method is how we go about amortizing this thing, okay? Again, look at this. The journal entries are basically the same. There's no premiums or discounts. If we take this thing all the way to maturity, we don't have to worry about having to erase any premiums or discounts. Thumbs up if you guys are with me on that. Cool. All right. Premiums, talking about an 8% market rate. I'm going to give them more than what they want. They're going to give me some extra cash up front. There it is, $108,000. Now, $108,000, again, we're using a straight line method. So take that extra $8,011, right? Divide it by 10 payments. Figure out your amortization first, then figure out what your interest expense is next. Then take a step back and ask yourself, does it make sense? Interest expense is less than my actual interest payments. Does that make sense? It does, because the market rate is less than what I have to pay them. So it's not going to cost me $5,000. I will write a check for $5,000, you understand? Legally, I'm required to do that. But how much of that $5,000 is coming out of my checking account? Roughly about $4,200. The other $800 is coming from that extra pile of cash they gave me up front. They are subsidizing a portion of these interest payments, and they know that, because I shouldn't be paying them 5%. I really should be paying them what they want, which is 4%. Okay, so schedule's pretty standard. You just got to know which direction to go. Thumbs up if you guys are with me on that. Good. All right. Total interest expense going to be less than total interest paid. It's a good thing, by a difference of 811. And I'm just going to rehashing my notes down here. Same thing over time. What is the issuance date journal entry? Just remember, and this is the thing, I don't always remember whether or not to debit or credit things, believe it or not. I know how to do accounting, but I also know how to do shortcuts, okay? Once I figure out what the cash is up front, and I know that the face value is, I usually leave a gap in my journal entry, and I figure out what do I need, a debit or credit to make that balance. In this case, I need a credit balance, and that makes sense. I've got a credit of 100,000, another credit of 100,000. What's the total carrying value up front? That's what they gave me. What is that? This is not discount, damn it. This should be premium. Premium on bond payable, 811. What does that really represent to you? Well, hopefully by now, when you look at the premium on bonds payable, that should represent an extra pile of cash that was given to us up front that will help subsidize the interest payments every 6 months. Thumbs up if you're with me on that. That's how it works, man. That's how markets work. Seems kind of tricky, but it's not. I'll finish this and we'll go on a break here. So I did just the first couple rows here of my schedule, just sort of show you that interest expense will always be the same. Amortization of the premium is always going to be the same. 5,000 is going to be my payment. This, regardless if we're using straight line or effective interest method, our payment will always have to be based on the stated rate. It will always be the same, okay? It's really just the interest expense and premium amounts we have to worry about. And again, what I'm saying is 4189 is what it truly costs me to make my semi-annual interest payment. Granted, there are present value factors, time value of money factors we have to take into consideration here. December 31st, it's the same journal entry, same. But just remember, it's the end of the year, so we have to credit interest payable. Credit cash the next day. Our carrying value, not discount, this is a premium. It's a premium situation. Carrying value is going down over time. We're starting off in the sky, we're working our way down to the ground. Pay off the interest on January 1st, tedious little exercise. Key thing here is the amounts that we're recording in a straight line do not change. It's nice, sweet, it's healthy, it's predictable. Analysts like that, by the way. What's the number one depreciation methodology that companies use when they're doing their depreciation recordings? Straight line, because investors like predictability. There's nothing wrong with this as long as it's not too different from effective interest method. We're going to amortize this bad boy, not discount, premium. God, Brett. Premium is going to be amortized all the way down to 0. Carrying value will be 0, and that's what we'll pay out in cash. $1,000. Mic drop. All right. Thumbs up if you guys are with me on that. Cool. I went through those kind of fast. Here's the thing. My notes may seem repetitive and redundant. I'm showing you little changes, little nuances with each example. Okay, so you just have to be aware of that. Now, I'm going to go on a break here. I have 10:56 on the clock. Let's come back at 11:05. All right, and we'll finish off the rest of 14.1, effective interest method. Excuse me. Yes. Okay. Thumbs up if you guys can hear me all right. Okay. Who are we missing? Ryan, Bryson, Kaylin. Everyone
I
voted.
hit escape on the poll on accident.
What?
I hit escape on my keyboard and the poll went away and I didn't get to answer it. So sorry.
Not acceptable. What would your answer be, Reagan?
I didn't even get to read it. I had a paper
Oh.
over my keyboard, so
Well, I'm gonna show it. So let me just sort of mark you down as present. Just say she has an issue with her escape key that she's fixing. Megan. Just giving you a hard time. Is it Olivo or Olivo? Olivo.
it's Olivo.
Olivo.
Yes.
Olivo, Olivo, Olivo. Olivo, Olivo, Olivo. Potato, potato. Okay, what? So, all right. So let me just throw this out there. Okay. It says true or false. 50-50 chance of guessing this correctly, Reagan. The straight line method of amortization. It's an acceptable method to use when we amortize premiums or discounts. FASB says we can use the straight line method so long as the interest expense that we recognize is not materially different from the interest expense that would be recorded using the effective interest method. What do you think, true or false? Is it acceptable? Is the straight line method just as good as the effective method so long as they're not materially different? What do you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Give me the gladiator. Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs up. Yes, that's essentially how the FASB works. So anybody else still need to put in their poll? This is how it works, folks. End polling, share results. Yes, so you guys can see there that FASB is pretty flexible. And the idea again is it kind of comes back to the using the straight line method of depreciation, right? We know that we can do more math when it comes to doing these amortization amounts, okay? But what's the difference? What's the big deal? Why should we go through doing a more complicated method as long as this stuff amortizes away to zero sooner or later, okay? The FASB says, yeah, the difference is, you'll see here, is there's a difference. The effect is really on the interest expense. Is the interest expense going to be higher or lower relative to what it would be if we use a different method? That's all the FASB cares about. And materially different, it depends on the size of your clients. I know in the case of my clients, they all use the effective interest method because they all know how to use Excel. And most accounting systems are sophisticated enough to do the math for you. So you just put in these parameters and they pop out a schedule saying, here's the amortization schedule, check it for validation. And then once it's inputted into their accounting system, that's what they use to amortize premiums and discounts. And it's all generated by the computer. Accountants just have to check it for every period just to make sure it's accurate. So that's how we do that sucker. All right, any other questions about that?
So I have a question for the polls. Are they going to be able to be shown on the recording, or is it just a different thing that happens?
What I share is the results, the overall results, right? But you won't be able to see what I can tell. I mean, I have the reports that I download say who voted for what, in which case I can kind of like snicker and make fun of people in private. But no, I'm just kidding. I don't do that. I just, the polls are essentially confidential. I'm not on the recording. So I just sort of share the overall results. So what you see on your screen that I share, that's what you'll see on the recording probably. Okay. So the more accurate method of amortization, this is the one that drove all my Accounting 2300 students into choosing management as their major. I'm just kidding. This is just more math, basically. Effective interest method. What's the difference? Well, it's basically saying we're not going to be using straight line. We're going to be using some sort of accelerated method, okay? And it's going to be based off of the carrying value. So what we really need to pay attention to closely is the carrying value each period. Now this is a little bit more tedious because we can't simply populate a spreadsheet easily by copying and pasting down. We have to go row by row by row by row. Okay. So down below, we're looking at a discount, same things as we saw before, but here's the difference. Okay. We have a carrying value that we have to pay close attention to every time we start a new payment. The carrying value for the first payment still 92640, but we have to multiply that by this periodic market rate. That's what determines the interest expense. Then we compare it to the actual cash paid out. The difference is the amortization amount. So this, under the effective interest method, you're going from left to right per my spreadsheet here. The amount is not 736. Recall from the previous example where it was straight line, we were amortizing 736, 736, 736. This is 558. It's not a whole lot, right? But compare that to the ending amount, 943, okay? So straight line is kind of doing this, and the effective interest of the amounts that we're amortizing is like this, and the amounts we're amortizing under the effective interest method is like this, okay? More curved, more accelerated. Why? Because the carrying value is going up over time. The carrying value is increasing, same as we saw before, but the carrying value is actually increasing at an increasing rate. So it's a second order kind of principle right there, right? It's increasing, yeah, but it's increasing quicker than it did the previous period. Every 6 months goes by, the carrying value is going to go up higher and higher. Therefore, guess what happens to the interest expense? It's not the same. It's going up higher and higher and higher. So we're starting off with an interest expense of 5558. But by the time this thing has its last interest payment, it's like almost $6,000. So carrying value is determining the interest expense. Carrying value is going up over time, therefore interest expense is increasing over time, okay? Again, you only really need to calculate 2 rows to see that trend, okay? On an exam, that's all I'm really gonna ask you to do. Thumbs up if you guys are with me on that. Cool. So as long as you're cool, like just doing some math, take your time when you're going through this template. What you see in your book, they may have their columns switched. Just pay, when you're going through and you're doing your reading, just realize that, I'm trying to follow along with what the book is, but usually I like to have my own sort of way of presenting things. So pay close attention to the columns and which direction that they're going. Overall, though, it's going to be the same. This is why the FASB says they don't really care if straight line or effective interest is used, so long as the interest expense each period isn't that different, okay? Yes, interest expense is different, but not by that much, okay? So overall, it's all going to be the same. It's kind of like you got when you're a kid, right? Sometimes you didn't like it when your food touched, right? You're more like, I like my lunch trays, where I got my meatloaf over here, and it doesn't touch my mashed potatoes over here. It doesn't touch my carrots over here, right? It's like, don't touch my stuff. But then, some people are like, man, it's all going in the same place in your stomach, right? So who gives a shit if it touches, That's essentially like the FASB's point of view. It's all going in the same place. So make sure you just realize you want to go one row at a time, and you want to figure out the interest expense first and the amortization amount last. Thumbs up if you're with me on that. Okay.
On the exam, will we be able to input this in an Excel sheet?
No, I'm not going to do that. You just sketch it out on paper. That's what I recommend doing. I tried, Dylan, I tried doing that in the past, and people actually got more confused. And I say, you guys kind of have it in your own sort of brain. And I say, if my method works for you, just be able to sketch it out on paper. But how you get to the answer, some people are quicker than others. Cool. All right. Journal entries. This is still the same. This is still the same initial journal entry. Okay. Just want to highlight that. Same starting point. And spoiler alert, let me scroll down all the way to the maturity. Where is that sucker? Maturity journal. There it is. Journal entry at maturity, guess what? Same. Was that page 24? So first journal entry, last journal entry is still the same. What's really different? It's the interest expenses. So obviously an exam question would ask you, hey, what's the interest expense for the first pay period or the second pay period or the, I wouldn't go more than probably 2 rows. I just think, you can demonstrate to me that you know how to do this stuff. I'm going to be able to see it usually as early as the first payment there. So it's the schedule that I'm using here. That's determined first. The payment to cash is always going to be the same. The difference is going to be the amount amortized. And again, when I sketch out my journal entries, I like to leave a gap and then just try to figure out what do I need to debit or credit. So it's just my way of sort of doing things. But I always start usually with an analysis first. Can I keep it straight in my head? This is not fixed. Key thing here. We do it once. So if I ask you on an exam question, is the interest expense increasing, decreasing, or the same each period? And all you really need to do is, calculate 2 rows. You can see 5558, 5558, 5592. You can see that it's increasing over time. Boom. That's the answer. Don't need to go much more detail than that. Is the amortization increasing or decreasing over time? We see that it goes 5585. It's increasing over time, right? 2 rows is all you really need. And yes, the carrying value is going to be increasing, right? It increased from here to here. The increase is 558, but the increase in the next period is 592. So yes, the carrying value is increasing upwards. Start in the basement, we go up to the top floor, to the face value, same as before, but we're doing so at a quicker pace. Kind of like me when I get up in the morning. I'm a little slow and have a sip of coffee. 592 is next interest expense. Where are we at? Here's the key thing. You notice that our carrying value is still pretty low after the second interest payment. Okay. Recall from the straight line method, the carrying value was up higher. Because why? Because with the straight line method, we're doing 736, 736, 736, right? This one's starting low, 558, 592, right? It's going to get up to speed. So carrying value, yeah, there might be a question about comparing interest expense or carrying values over time, right? There's all different types of questions I can ask about this. Key thing is, can you sketch out an example, right? Sure you can. So under effective, we amortize less discount in the beginning than under the straight line. Under the effective interest method, we amortize more discount towards the end than under the straight line. We just saw that up above. So all the other journal entries are pretty much the same as we saw before. Yes, we're still amortizing it all the way down to 0, as we don't really care too much. The only difference is these are all, it changes. The amount that we are amortizing is changing over time, okay? But still goes from 92640 up to 200,000. So same ending payments. Thumbs up if you guys are with me on this so far. Cool. I'm always impressed by your guys' hair. Maybe it's just because I'm jealous. I don't have hair anymore. I just say, fuck it, and pick it backwards, whatever. But, if I ever give you guys compliments about your hair, just realize it's mostly because I'm jealous, right? Enjoy your youth. Enjoy your hair. The situation of a premium, still starting off with 108, 111, okay? But again, process, go to left to right, row by row. 108 times this time, it's a 4% market rate. Why? Because the market's cool with a lesser amount than what we're giving, right? So we're going to give them too much. So what they're going to do is give us more cash up front, but the actual interest expense is based off of what they actually want. Now, what they're given, interest expense is based off what they want. Figure that out, compare it to the cash payment, the amount premium that we're amortizing is 676. What's happening over time? We see that is going from small up to large over time. That's the way the math works out. Yes, the carrying value is going down. Excuse me. Carrying value is going down over time. Interest expense is going down over time. Compare that to the cash payment. We're amortizing more towards the end. Just sort of phenomenons you just want to get used to. You know? Still ends up total amounts that we pay out, still the same thing. Go run one row at a time. Start with interest expense first, amortization amount second. Balance is still carrying value is still decreasing over time. It's decreasing at an increasing rate. On your homework, which you'll see a little later on, I actually put homework in Excel and have you input your numbers or calculations, okay? And on some of those inputs, it will automatically populate other results. One of the things I have you do is create a schedule like this in Excel. And so long as you know how to do simple functions like this equals, like an equals function, equals this cell times this cell, you should be fine, okay? But if you have any questions about using Excel on the homework, just let me know. But you'll get a chance to sort of see how all this stuff works out. And I can show you some cool shortcuts too. Same starting point, same ending point, okay? Carrying value is going to be 108, 111, but the amount that we expense is going to be different over time. And again, I say, figure out what your expense is going to be, plug in what you know is going to be the cash payment, leave a little space, and figure out if you need a debit or credit. It should be fine. It's not a fixed amount. Key thing is it's not a fixed amount. Again, different. And you notice that interest expense is decreasing over time. So this is a point where, as an auditor, what I would have to do is if my client was using the straight line method, this always sucked. If my client was using the straight line method, I would actually have to go through and figure out what the journal entry would have been if they use the effective interest method. Then I would compare this amount to the straight line method interest expense that they did record, and I would calculate what the difference is and record that in my working papers. And say if the client is using straight line method, their interest expense is slightly higher or lower than what it would be under the effective interest method by this amount. The aggregate for the year is this, and it's below the materiality threshold. No other issues noted, kind of a thing. That's how my documentation would work. Believe it or not, when you're out there as an auditor, you're doing a lot of writing, listening, writing, communicating, kind of a thing. It's not as much math as you think you're going to be doing out there. So pretty much just checking to see if your clients are doing it right. Thumbs up if you guys are with me on that. Cool. When I went to work for Washington Mutual, it was so cute. I had the auditors come and see me and ask me what I was doing. And so I was like, oh, look at you. I remember when I was an auditor. Every time, the cool thing is when you're an auditor, usually your clients that you're working with, they all probably started off at PwC or KPMG or Moss Adams or something like that, right? So you're always like, as an auditor, you're usually dealing with former auditors and they get what you're trying to do. And, you know, it's not uncommon to say, like, here, give me the laptop. Let me just document this for you. See what I'm doing here? I did that once, and she was so appreciative because she's trying to, like, take notes while I'm speaking about it. And I'm like, would it be helpful if I just put it in an email and send it to you? She'd be, that'd be great. So, no problem. No problem. Right. I always have a good relationship with my clients and with my auditors. All right. So, carrying value. Under effective interest methods 106. Under the straight line method, it was not very much different, 106, 789. So we're not bringing, so under the effective interest method, we're not bringing it down as fast. In the beginning, we're kind of like slow. It takes us a little while for that caffeine to kick in, right? A little bit slower, than towards the end we get really fast. So it's, at the end of the day, is it very much different? No, clearly it's not. Amortize more, amortize less, just the way that the rates go, how the process is working. And again, maturity date, we should see a zero balance. This is the key thing. You know you've done it right when after you've recorded your last interest payments or interest expense, I should say, after your last interest expense, you should have zero balance in your premiums or discounts. And then all that's left over is just your empty out your bonds payable. Pay the sucker off. Get rid of that with a debit, credit, cash. You're good to go. Done. There is a whole other section dedicated to messing with your mind. And it's a situation where we don't issue bonds on January 1st. We issue them on, say, March 1st. And I went through that and I thought, oh my God, with all the other things you guys have to learn, this didn't seem to matter too much. So this is a lot of work as is. So as you read through the book and come across things you're not quite sure if it's going to be something I test you on, you can just ask me or just bring it up, ask me in an email or ask me in class, I'll let you know. So situations where we're talking about partial pay periods or whatever, I'm not going to test you on that. So examples you get are where we issue on the payment date. All right, thumbs up if you guys are with me on that. Try to keep it simple. A lot of different nuances there. Now, we could jump into 14.2. I put the notes up there, but I'm going to do this. I'm going to stop right there and address 14.2 tomorrow with 14.3. So I'll get 14.3 up on the notes up there as well. And then 14.4, I'll get those up either today or tomorrow. And then we move on into chapter 17. Now, here's the thing. That was a lot of notes that we just went through, okay? One of the reasons why it's important that we get this out of the way is because chapter 17 looks at investing in bonds. And when we are investing in bonds, we have to worry about premiums and discounts, okay? So I know that up above, you're on the bond payable side. In chapter 17, what you'll see is we have, we'll just call them debt investments. We can call them not bonds receivable, just investments in bonds or debt investments or investments in debt, in which case you would see on the opposite side, you'd have $100,000, okay? Now, the book says don't separate out the premiums and discounts if you're the investor. If you're in the investor side, just lump everything into the one account. Don't try to necessarily like separate out the premiums and discounts from the face value. Just throw it all in. So there is a slight difference when you're on the investment side. We'll talk about that, okay? But it's important that you know that when we go into chapter 17, the mechanics behind the accounting are going to be the same, okay? You still have to worry about whether or not you're using straight line or effective interest method, if there's a premium or discount, et cetera. But as long as you're comfortable with the math that's going on here, you should be fine for chapter 14. So we won't have to spend too much time on that particular topic. Cool, thumbs up if you guys are with me on that. All right. So that's why we're doing 14 and 17, because a lot of the topics there are very similar. Then we do 15 and 16. So I'm going to stop here and let you guys go. If you don't have any questions, feel free to log off. If you have any questions, I'll hand the floor over to you. Are there any questions out there?
Yes, Dr. Scott.
Mhm.
I was wondering about the exams. I saw in the syllabus that they were going to be multiple choice. Are they all only multiple choice? Or are we going to be responsible for completing some of these tables?
I thought about that. I'm just going to say no. It's just going to be straight up multiple choice.
Okay.
Yeah. I know that some professors like to do, show your work and write in the journal entry and et cetera, et cetera. And I'm of the mindset where it's like, if you can get the answer right in multiple choice, you pretty much know what you're doing. So I recommend, though, that you take time practicing sketching out these examples on paper, because I'm not going to ask you to show your work on the exam, but you'll want to have something on your scratch paper to refer back to if you want to review your exam. So that your scratch paper that you hang on to is a way for us to kind of like see what your thought process was on the exam. So that's all I'm going to say is you don't have to show your work. There's not going to be any type of fill in the blank. It's all going to be multiple choice. Scratch papers permitted. I recommend strongly that you hang on to your scratch paper if you want to, especially if you want to review your exam. Cool?
Okay, sounds good.
Any other questions? Like I said, I got office hours after this. Give me some time to get this video up on YouTube. I need to fix the other YouTube video to make sure it's available. I'll have my office hours open on Zoom at noon. So you can just use that link to jump into office hours. You got a question, you want to talk to me about something. Other than that, you guys are free to go.
I have one question.
Yeah.
You were talking about, I missed when you were talking about group work. You said you got to do that on your own time, correct? After class or when you assign our groups?
Yeah, if there's like time, like if you had group work that was assigned, I'd give you the rest of the class a day. I'd have you go into breakout rooms and work on it together if you wanted to. But how you do it outside of this class period is up to you.
Okay. That's all I had.
Any other questions? Mario, Bryson, you guys good? Mustafa? Yeah, Bryson and a Brian. That's going to cause me a headache at some point.